Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org. This is PBS Reno Arts. I'm Dave Santina, coming to you this time from the Azure Room at the Margaritaville Resort at Lake Tahoe, where we are at the second annual Lake Tahoe Documentary Film Festival. Very excited that we're here. This is our first time doing a podcast outside of our own studio, so I'm confused. There are people here and different lights, and everything looks so nice. And here I get to talk to fascinating people. I'm here with two documentary producers, Nadia and Dominic Gill. Do you prefer Dom or Dominic?
Whatever you prefer.
Well, Dom's easier because it's fewer syllables, so I might just go there.
Let's do it.
We might just go there. We'll see. But they are together. They are Encompass Films, which is a company that creates. Works with brands, outdoor brands, to create content. Is that a fair description?
I'd say that would be one arm of what we do. We also do independent documentary.
Okay, independent documentary as well. We saw just now some of the documentary content that you create. We saw the film with Pete Stetina, a professional cyclist, called Feeding the Rat, and it says Feeding the Rat and then in parentheses, and not knowing when to stop. And then the word "not" goes away. And I thought that was really interesting. You making a comment at the beginning of the film. It was really fascinating to experience that one, and I've seen it now a couple of times, and I really enjoyed that one. For those of you who are in the room, I apologize for being redundant. You've seen this, but the people listening haven't. So I want to describe a little bit. A pro cyclist named Pete Stetina, who is facing the end of his career, and he's racing his final season. And this is his final race that we see.
As a filmmaker, I wish it was. In fact, it was not, but we tried to make it feel like it was.
It was supposed to be.
It was the beginning of his final season, and it was supposed to be the announcement of his retirement, which would happen at the end of the year.
Okay, because it really felt like it was the last for him. So I enjoyed watching it, but I was one of my questions was did he actually retire at the end of this? Because that's one of the things that we talked about in the film. So apparently he continued a little bit afterward, but he was racing the Mount Washington Auto Road Bicycle Hill Climb in New Hampshire, and his dad was a professional cyclist who had a record in this particular race, the Mount Washington Auto Road Bicycle Hill Climb, and he was trying to break his dad's record, and so that was the mission. And so it was really interesting to see that effort. But what I loved was how you, in very short time, were able to introduce us to him and his family in a way that is very, very relatable, and you do it really quickly, and you do it with very little time. We see him looking at photos of his family and his own history, road rash and things, and it immediately connects me to him, and I thought that was really well done. So when you approach a film like this, how do you begin to try to tell that story?
Well, it's a great question, and as I mentioned, and as you partly mentioned, Nadia and I, we make independent documentaries and also branded content and commercial content. So we keep the wolf from the door by making what's traditionally been called branded content. And when a brand, or in this case an athlete with a brand, came to me, Pete, who I've made a film about before, and said, listen, I would like you to make a film about my mic drop moment, my retirement, and it's going to be on this race, and I'm going to smash the record, and it's all going to be amazing. As a branded storyteller, you hope that's the case, because then everyone leaves happy. As a documentary filmmaker, I think that's kind of a boring story, honestly. And so in the end, we made, I think, what is more of an interesting story. However, we were very worried that the brands would not want to be as honest as we were, because you could argue it doesn't make the bike or the athlete or the sponsors look great, but actually they were all mature enough to lean into this and understand that like midlife, and whether it be failing fitness or strength or family commitments, is something that is a universal and much more relatable than being a world-beating athlete.
Yeah, and I thought that was fascinating because we talked a little bit before this, and I was introduced to the notion of the brand content, and you would not know, at least I wouldn't, I don't know if those of you watching and who just saw the film would feel the same way, but you wouldn't really know that it has any connection to a brand whatsoever to me. Yes, you see brand names and equipment has names stamped on it, but it didn't feel at all like it represented any of the brands of the equipment that he was using, or the cycles or the gear, any of it. And it just felt like the story of a person, and a really engaging story. And so I really enjoyed learning that story, watching what happened, and then at the end of it, feeling for him. I don't want to spoil the whole thing for people who haven't watched it yet, but he's trying to do something that's very difficult and it's exhausting. And I noticed that he gives you seemingly complete access to him, and your camera's everywhere. Very personal moments with the family. He and his wife sitting on the couch talking about his future, and is this really it? And how hard it is to give up being a pro athlete. And then at the end of this exhaustive effort, there's a camera right next to him, and it's the first time I saw him turn away from the camera. He was exhausted, and I thought, what is that like for you to be in that position where you have to get in the face, finish the story with someone who is, at that moment, he's maybe not interested anymore.
I think it's a really difficult thing as a documentary filmmaker, and I think Nadia, in some ways, is a bit more hard-nosed than I am. She when she's present at shoots, will often push and ask me to get closer and closer, and I'm there going, but this person needs their time right now. But of course, that's the catch-22. That is when the best stories come out or are told, or real exhaustion tells the story itself. So luckily Pete was, I've worked with him before. We know each other well enough now that he just wants to make sure we tell the best story we can.
Well, I think this one came out beautifully. So Nadia, at this point, you were watching it together, and I'm wondering, when you watch a film like this, or any of your films with an audience, is it different versus watching it at home, or in the edit suite, getting it prepared and just doing all the work?
I mean, I think about different things. I was just going to actually remark on the previous conversation you were having by saying, actually, when Dom was editing the film, I went down to watch the scene, and I literally said, that is going to be so hard for Pete to watch in public. So when I was sitting there, every time I watched this film, I've only seen this film 2 times in public. It's been around, but we haven't been able to be present every time. I'm actually not thinking about the audience in that moment. I'm thinking about Pete Stetina every single time when I see that moment. And I'm just like, it is very vulnerable. And he does see himself as a, world-beating athlete. And that has been his story. And then to see yourself in a moment on camera revealed as, less than your best effort. From the first time Dom showed it to me, I was like, oof, that's gonna be hard.
I think it's also different. I think some of us are used to opening up and being vulnerable to people. Athletes often have been trained or brainwashed to be the opposite. If you're like Pete Stetina, you come from literally 3 generations of Tour de France stage-winning cyclists. That is not a vulnerable, emotionally open backdrop off which to function.
Right. So to see him in that moment, he's not interested in sharing that necessarily, but you really feel him, I think, in the interview moments when he's looking to camera, and it's a technique that's really effective because he's talking to us as the audience, and when he's talking about himself and this future, and this being the end of his professional career, and you really feel him struggling for to sort of identify what his identity is going to be going forward.
I'm really, for technical nerds out there, I'm very pleased that you noticed the use of what we in the trade call an interrotron, which is more correctly called an iDirect, which is like a horizontal periscope to allow the camera to be behind a mirror. So what Pete thinks he's looking at is a reflection of my face as I talk to him, but he's actually looking right into the lens, which is very difficult for people to do under normal circumstances.
Yeah, he did it, and he did it. It's very effective, and I think Errol Morris was the first person to do it, and became famous as the creator of the Interrotron. And but it's such an effective way to for someone to tell their story to an audience, as long as they feel authentic, and he certainly did. He certainly did. How do you get people to relax enough to talk about themselves and these personal stories on camera?
I think I often ask other filmmakers the same question. Sorry. I think that there's a special sauce between the amount of time you spend not with the camera rolling and with this subject. It's tough because a lot of times you're tempted when you're with them to keep the camera rolling, because what if I miss the best moments? And you're there to film, and when you spend time with them, it costs money. Even if it's just without the camera, you're still, you're a crew, you're on a schedule. But I think that, it's a fine balance, and I don't really know if we have the answer. I would say I think sometimes we're successful at it, and then sometimes I ask myself if we're as successful as we could be. Are we thinner? Is a story thinner than we could actually make it if we spent more time, if we had more of a relationship? And sometimes the story is thinner because that's what the budget requires. Sometimes it's thinner because you don't connect with them on an individual level. And sometimes it's thinner because maybe the story isn't that deep to begin with. But I think these are kind of the soft things that you play with as a filmmaker to ask yourself, am I getting the best footage?
I will say I've always lived by the sort of creed that you can't cheat time, and in filmmaking that comes across, and there are lots of great adventure films at this festival, and generally speaking, the longer the adventure is, the more open and intimate and honest the film becomes, because exhaustion often breeds honesty and opening up to the camera, and literally not having the energy to be reserved anymore.
It's kind of like being drunk. You become your true self, right?
Well, drunk and exhausted.
Yeah.
Is fantastic.
You get everything that's real at that point, no matter what. So we also viewed a film called Marcus and Me, which I had not seen before, and that was fascinating. Sort of two Marcuses. One is a mentor, one is a young student, and the idea, again, you're bringing the outdoors into focus, but this is in the city. This is in Pittsburgh. How did that story come about?
I actually wanted to remark on the fact that what you're seeing is three different, like Dom, you asked about branded content, and Dom said that's one arm of what we do, and I would say each one of those films is a different arm, and I think it's worth taking a moment to consider them. So as we talked about, Feeding the Rat is sort of in the branded content zone. It's brought by a brand about an athlete. You find a real documentary story though, and that's pretty cool. This one is what we would call an advocacy film, which is often by a nonprofit who's trying to get something across in a mission, like a mission statement in the film. And then the third one, the little trailer you saw, is for an actual independent documentary. That means it's a myriad of funders in a myriad of ways, and you just kind of sling it together, and your voice is all that really matters. So just going back to Marcus and Me for a second, it's an advocacy film, and it came about because the Redford Center, who is they're a mover and shaker in the world of environmental and outdoor advocacy, storytelling advocacy specifically, commissioned us to make the film, and they gave us I think probably 16 options of stories to tell, and they asked us which one we connected with, and Dom's a climber, and I think immediately we liked this story because of its unique approach to climbing, and also we both love Pittsburgh. We've been there 2 times before in our filmmaking career, and there's something interesting about those kind of former, like it was a heyday and then it was depressed, and now it's kind of coming back, and it's in a nice zone where it's a lot of new people, new experiences, new businesses, and it's like it's not too expensive. It's just really lovely. So I think we thought there's an interesting story in these sort of communities which are not so rich or so poor, but are bringing together the people in a special way to like have energy in the city. What are we going to do? How are we going to make it better? And I think the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition sort of exemplified that.
Yeah, that's the group that we see in the film. The adult Marcus represents the Outdoor Inclusion Coalition, and it immediately made me think, do we have one of those around where I live? I think that would be great, because what a wonderful mission to bring the children from anyone, I assume, from the city to outside to appreciate and respect and engage with the outdoors. I thought it was tremendous. And the notion that they brought up at one point of building a climbing facility under a bridge was, I thought, beautiful. I love that. I would love to see that happen.
It's cool actually screening the film here. Yesterday we screened it at the high school in town, and it's funny because I think growing up as a kid in Tahoe, the idea of like trying to find disused industrial detritus to climb on is like, why would you do that? And it's very easy to get out and experience. Every time you walk to school, you're experiencing nature. I personally find it much more of a universally useful concept to encourage people to understand or redefine nature depending on where they live, and be able to have an adventure in whatever sort of substrate you inhabit.
I agree. Yeah, I think I having done a number of outdoor programs running around the state of Nevada and occasionally climbing, not very well, I will say. The idea of doing that in town is really appealing, and the way that they're doing it, they're talking about, there's one point where we see them on a wall, like just a building, essentially, or a sort of substructure, some support for a bridge, and I think about that versus, say, a climbing wall, which you see, there's a hotel in Reno that's got a climbing wall, and that's fun, and people love that, but to just climb on an existing building that wasn't originally designed for that, and yet have that experience, I think that there's got to be a connection there that just opens your mind in a different way.
It's actually funny, I went to a British boarding school, very sort of Harry Potter-ish, and I remember when I grew up there really weren't climbing gyms, that wasn't a thing, but we used to climb just like on that buttress on the back of the school church, which was not popular. But it left the church like pockmarked with white chalk all over it. But it was fun.
Oh, so you've been climbing for a long time. You've been doing this, making these films for almost 20 years now, right? And Nadia, you were an attorney before you got into production life. Is that right?
That is correct.
It's okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'm not quite old enough to have been a filmmaker for 20 years. I think Dom maybe, but I've been doing it for 15 years. So it gives me a little time to be an attorney.
So what brought you into it? What brought you into this world?
Well, Dom, I met Dom in the salt flats of Uyuni, Bolivia, and he was riding a tandem bicycle, inviting strangers to get on the back and making a documentary. And I had never, I didn't know people did adventures. Like, I was from the city, I was from the suburbs of Los Angeles, like kind of a bookworm kind of kid. And then I was like, oh, that's really cool. We didn't really get together at that time. It was a couple years later I re-met him. But the second time I was like, it'd be kind of fun to be a filmmaker. So I got pretty much grafted off of this guy. And today I would say, equally as a filmmaker as he is.
I think so. You are a producer and a director. Your name appears on all of these works. You have a brand new one coming up, or at least another one that we just previewed that's going to screen here tomorrow. I assume you've screened it elsewhere already, but I don't know. It's not premiering here, is it?
No, it premiered at DC Environmental Film Fest last month.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the conservatives with the parenthetical around conserve. It's screening tomorrow, so we don't want you to give it all away, but could you just describe for those listening who might want to find it later, what's the premise?
Yeah, well, this is a film that was just an idea that I wanted to see if I could find meaning in. I just, maybe it actually brings back a little bit of my career as a lawyer. I'm very interested in politics, and I have a strong political identity, even though we primarily make environmental and outdoor content. And climate change is something we deeply care about. So the premise of this film is that we followed conservative climate change advocates to see if they could make any headway in essentially convincing people right of center to care about an issue which is traditionally perceived as left of center.
Okay, and so I mean, the trailer was fascinating. It made me immediately want to watch the film. So I commend you on it. I think it's a fascinating subject, and it's the kind of thing that will hopefully make people stop and listen to each other a little bit, and instead of barking at each other, and actually try to understand a little bit better why we feel the way we feel about things.
Yeah, I think it accomplishes that mission. I won't tell you what happens in the film, but I do think that it is a conversation starter, and that it's great for anyone to see, because it's really about depolarization and democracy building. It's housed in the world of climate change and environmental film, but the themes are much broader and bigger than that, I would say.
Okay, well, we look forward to it. Now, when the film festival circuit is over, films like this are hopefully viewable in other formats. How do you share your films with people?
Well, they all come out at different times. So Feeding the Rat actually is on YouTube at the moment on Pete and Canyon's channel, so you can check it out there if you want. That would be great for listeners of this, because it's somewhere they can see.
Yes, that'd be great.
And then Marcus and Me, I believe, is about to be dropped on REI's YouTube channel in July. So that will also go out on YouTube. Both Marcus and Me and Feeding the Rat already is. And then the Conservatives will spend the rest of this year, it's going to Mountain Film and Telluride next month. And then we'll probably do another 6 to 8 months on the festival circuit. And I am actually toying with the idea of dropping it on YouTube ourselves. I don't know how to do this yet. I see other filmmakers do it. We've kind of been in the traditional vein. We've been very fortunate to have our films distributed by people like Netflix or the Discovery Channel or Smithsonian Channel. But I'm really interested in keeping the barrier to entry very low. I think this is a very niche film that maybe not a lot of platforms would particularly be interested in, but I'm interested in it being readily available for people to see so it can have the greatest impact. So I'm going to spend the next 6 to 8 months learning about how to, I mean, I know how to upload a film to YouTube, but like how to actually attempt to reach audiences on there and where to put your resources, because I think this film deserves the widest audience it can get.
I think it's actually an interesting and terrifying time for filmmakers to be alive, because I've spent my life trying to ignore the fact that YouTube is a really good outlet for film and pretentiously believing that it's terrible. That is not the case. It's actually where I'd say some films have got more traction than any others over the last few years, so it's to be taken very seriously.
Agreed. You might also consider a public television broadcast. I happen to know some people, so if you're interested.
I actually think public television is a fantastic place for this documentary as well, so maybe we'll have a chat.
Let's have a conversation. Yeah. To be continued. One of the things that I loved about the end of Chasing the Rat was when Pete looks into the camera and, well, he's talking to you, Dom, and he says, if I come back in 2027 and I want to race again, I want you to slap me. So do you feel like you need to warm up your slapping arm in the next 6 months or so?
I mean, I think both me and his wife are warming up our slapping arms. He actually, it's worth mentioning, Pete is almost a local. He lives in Santa Rosa. He comes up to Tahoe to train all the time. It's a second home to him. And on May 15th, he has a pretty well-known and lovely race down in the Carson Valley called Stetner's Pay Dirt. And that's May 15th this year. It's really fun. It's not just for, hard-headed athletes. It's for everyone to come out and have a good time. And Pete is a massive fan of beer, so that flows fairly freely.
Cycling and beer don't seem to go together, and his physique does not look like someone who's drinking a lot of beer.
Do you cycle? Because cycling and beer are always together.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I do think I have some memories of seeing some cyclists post-race imbibing pretty well. Well, and also I noticed that the Athletic was one of the brands in that film, and I have enjoyed an Athletic from time to time because they're non-alcoholic and much lower in calories. So you can have your beer and still be an athlete. That works.
Now you're doing our job for us, talking about Athletic beer on your podcast.
You know, I'm here to help. I'm just here to help. So film festivals like the one we're at right now and the ones around this area, they all need champions to spread the word, and you started a nonprofit to help contribute to that, the Bristle Cone Collective. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, I mean, shouldn't need reminding, but places like Lake Tahoe Documentary Film Festival are amazing places to see film, and especially in communities where art house movie theaters are dying by the dozen. You know, just down the street, one closed down not long ago. So there are very few places you can see anything other than Marvel movies these days. So thank you to this festival and others for keeping that alive. I think both Nadia and I, having moved from LA to Truckee, we both felt that while there are a lot of creative professionals up here that, particularly cameramen and producers and editors that have all worked in outdoor sports for big brands, there isn't a sense of a real coalescing community. And often, you know, there are people that film here all the time. We see car commercials here all the time. We see films shot, you know, in the Tahoe Basin all the time. They often don't use crew from here because they don't have a central point where they can network. And so one of the things that Bristlecone Film Collective, this new organization, 501c3 that we've set up, is going to do is hopefully provide that hub for people to come in and use the expertise that we have here. We also have other plans.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're really you know, if you go to Park City or you go to Telluride, there are film communities that are networked, and there are institutions which support them, and there are festivals which show films, maybe not always exclusively their films, but they basically have a film culture, even though they're mountain towns and not city centers. And I think what we have realized, and what Michelle, I think, already realized, and why she started Lake Tahoe Documentary Film Fest, is that this region, north and south, sort of lacks a film culture. And so our job, along with LTDFF, is really to just shift that culture. So I think, as Dominic mentioned, cohering the actual film community is the first step in that, because together we form a more powerful group of people who can advocate for the job that we do, the product that we make, the way that it affects the surrounding economies that we live in. I think in the North, we're running a monthly film screening series that just simply provides access to films in Truckee. And over time, we want to create, an educational institute and a film fund that can fundamentally be supportive of filmmakers, in which I call the triangle from Sacramento to Reno to Bishop, which is kind of like the rural northern Sierras. And there are a lot of filmmakers actually out there in the mountains. And we saw a great local program this morning that featured I think 7 films from people in this region just here today, 7 short films. And there are other films that were not in that local short. I think 3 or 4 others just at this festival from people who live in this triangle. And so I just think we've seen this gap, and Bristlecone Film Collective's goal is to just put one foot in front of the other and shift the culture and try and build the institutions necessary to make film a real thing here, a real competitive industry and cultural movement.
Nice. And not-for-profits are always looking for help. So do you need assistance? Are people able to contribute or participate in any way, volunteering or just financial support? What do you need?
I mean, right now, I just love for people to reach out to us. You can find us online at bristleconefilmcollective.org, or you can reach out to us on Instagram. You'll find us if you just put in Bristlecone Film. We do need resources. I was just talking this morning to another filmmaker about possibly putting together a small traveling film festival just to the regions of like Placerville, Auburn, Mammoth, Bishop, Carson, South Tahoe, that maybe is a shorts program just featuring the filmmakers here, and they'd be one-off. So that's something we'd be interested if that feels appealing to somebody. But we're just like, getting these inspired ideas and starting to put them together. We've launched in January, and hopefully in a year we'll see real progress.
It's exciting. I appreciate that you're doing that, and I love that you've already got a film program. You've got is it monthly, right? A monthly film.
Yeah.
And I think that doing that is the best way to start. You know, people who love film are going to show up, presumably, once they know about it.
When does this air?
This will be probably a couple of weeks.
And okay, well maybe it's too late, but on Thursday we're screening Surat, which is a very daring film that has not been in Reno or Truckee. It was nominated for an Academy Award in the foreign category from Spain. It is a if you dare kind of film, but I thought maybe your listeners, if they're into art.
I think so.
We decided, we've screened 3 films so far, and Truckee obviously being an outdoor hub. The first one was about skiing in Afghanistan, and I call that the gateway drug to art house cinema. The second one was about dog sledding in the north of Norway and helping kids overcome problems using this sort of teamwork as a philosophy. And the third one definitely is not outdoor. It's more Burning Man and a lot more than that.
Oh, all right. That's intriguing. Well, I appreciate that you're doing it. I look forward to coming in to seeing some of the screenings and to bringing people along. I'd like to help see this grow because it's a beautiful idea. And once it, what I imagine what you envision is pretty grand and would make for a wonderful community.
Yeah, and I think we want to come and do some screenings in Reno because you don't actually have an art house cinema either in Reno. You do have the Cordillera Film Festival, which is once a year, which is awesome. But we have already partnering with Bristlecone Beer Brewery, Bristlecone Brewery.
There you go.
That's in Reno.
It's beer
and
again.
they want to show some films. So we thought maybe there could be a Reno arm of Bristol. Like, we're going to get down there, is what I'm saying. So look us up. If you're in Reno and you don't think we're relevant to you, we're going to be relevant to you.
I think that it's very soon. You will be relevant very soon. Maybe we can help make that happen. Maybe a little broadcast film festival in the name of Bristlecone, something like that. All right, great. Well, do you have any works in the projects in the works right now? Are you working on multiple films right now? You do so many things. It feels like you must have a bunch of irons in the fire at all times. Are you in like mid-process with a bunch of stories?
Because of brands and agency work, we often get asked to make stories that don't necessarily squarely fit into the sort of outdoor realm, and we're actually working on a film, a short documentary about SNL fandom, so which is not environmental, but it is interesting.
I bet.
So we're working on that currently, and always, Nadia and I have had something on the back burner for years where we would like to make a film about the state. The often overlooked and misunderstood great state of Nevada.
Oh, well, I can help you with that.
Yeah.
I know parts of that place.
We're toying with the title "Sorry, We're Full."
I've seen that on a few license plates or bumper stickers, and yeah, those people are announcing themselves very clearly. All right. Well, I could talk to you guys forever, but we've got to wrap it up. Thank you for the time and for sharing your films and for talking about it. It's always fascinating to know what goes into this work.
We love being able to show these films. Without that, we'd have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. I have to do my little script before we're gone. So I want to remind everybody who's listening or watching on PBS Reno to watch Artifacts on PBS Reno. That's via broadcast, streaming on pbsreno.org, the PBS Reno YouTube channel or the PBS app. Also read art views on pbsreno.org. Now, do you have any questions or maybe comment or suggestion? If so, send them to me at podcast@pbsreno.org. My thanks again to Nadia and Dominic Gill and the audience who came out, and thank you for listening and watching PBS Reno Arts.
Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org.